dividing decimals. Okay, let's talk a little bit. So we've already learned how to multiply when we have decimal factors. We've learned that you can take away the decimal points and multiply the numbers as if they were whole numbers. So for example, we could do 203 times 11, and it would give us 2,233. Then you just go back and place the decimal point by counting how many decimal places there are in each factor. There are 2 in the first factor and 1 in the second factor, so that's a total of 3 decimal places needed in our answer. So we come over here to our answer, we start at the right, and we do 1, 2, 3. There's our 3 decimal places, so our decimal point would go between the 2 2's. But what if we wanted to divide? What if we wanted to take our 2 and 233 thousandths and divide that by 2 and 300ths? How would you figure out your answer? Well, you still would do the long division. So remember, the total amount goes inside the house and the divisor goes on the outside. And what you're really doing is you're saying, okay, this is one factor. I want to find the other factor that when multiplied together will equal this 2.233. But how are we going to do it when there are decimal numbers involved? Well, you could look at this and you could say, I know when I multiply that since my answer has 3 decimal place values, that my total decimal place values in my factors should have 3. So since this one has 2, then my other factors should have 1 decimal place value. Say what? Yes, it gets confusing. It really is confusing, and not only that, it's easier to make mistakes. And why go through all of that confusion when there's an easier way of doing division when the divisor is a decimal number? And that's what we're going to talk about in this lesson. So let's get started. Mr. Torres bought 84 5/10 pounds of gummy worms, yum, to make Halloween treat bags. He wants each bag to weigh 5/10 pounds. So how many treat bags can he make? All right, remember in division problems, you're given the total amount. Okay, you always check to make sure that it is division. Check to make sure you know the total or the whole amount. And we do. The total amount is 84 5/10 pounds. Okay, so that is what we call our dividend. So we're going to fill this in. And then our divisor is going to be the 5/10 pounds. And in this case, our divisor, it's not the number of groups, because the number of groups would be how many treat bags, but it's the size of the groups. We want each group to be 5/10. Then again, write your expression. When you're writing a division expression, the dividend always comes first. That total whole amount comes first. So it's 84 5/10 being divided by 5/10. And then just set up your division problem. The first number goes inside the house, 84 5/10, and the divisor, the second number, goes on the outside. Now, be very careful. A common mistake is that students believe that the larger number always has to go inside the house. Now that we're dealing with decimals, numbers with parts, that's not always going to be true. Sometimes it might be smaller. For example, he might have 5/10 pounds of gummy worms, and he wants to split it equally among 3 students. Among 3 students. Okay, well in this case, the divisor is larger than the dividend. So the 0.5 would go inside the house. So be very careful, be aware of that. It's always going to be the total or whole amount that goes inside the house. Okay, so now that we have our division problem set up, the easiest way to do this, and instead of trying to figure out how many decimal points you need in your quotient, is just, hey, I cannot divide with a decimal divisor. I need to change it to a whole number. And you can do this by multiplying by powers of 10. So if you look, our place values, of course, go by tens, and there's only one place value. So I would just need to multiply this by 10. And 5/10 times 10 is going to give you 5. So really all you're doing is you're moving the decimal point over. In this case, one place. When I move my decimal point over and put it behind the 5, it now becomes a whole number. And whatever you do to the outside, you have to do to the inside. So I have to move this decimal point one place to the right as well. So my new decimal is behind the 5. So rewriting the problem, our divisor is 5, and our dividend, or whole amount, is now 845. Make sure you place the new decimal point, bring it straight up to your answer line, make it nice and big so that you don't lose it or miss it when you're writing your answer. And you're ready to do your division. So let's go ahead. 5 will go into 8 once, which is 5. Subtract 3 remainder. Bring down the 4. 5 will go into 34 6 times, which is 30. Subtract. Bring down your 5. Try to keep everything lined up. And 5 will go into 45 9 times, which is 45. And there is 0 remainder, so we are done. So Mr. Torres can make 169 treat bags. A couple of things to point out. One is that for every digit inside the house, you need to have a digit above it, whether it's a 0 or an actual 1, 2, 3, or whatever. Second thing is try to keep everything lined up nice and neat. A lot of students make the mistake, they're in a rush, and this 1, instead of putting it above the 8, it's moved over closer to in front of the 4, which means the 9 ends up being behind the decimal point, which is not correct. Okay, let's try another one. Mrs. Delrose bought 2.5 pounds, or 2.5 pounds of steak for $52. How much did she pay per pound? Okay, let's identify. Do we know the whole total amount? We do. She paid a total of $52. So that's your dividend. This will be a division problem. And the divisor is the 2.5 pounds, which is the number of groups. We're looking for the size of the groups, and the size of the groups would be how much per pound. Okay, so our expression, the whole number goes first, which is the 52. I shouldn't say whole number. The whole amount, or the total amount, which is the 52, goes first, and our divisor is 2.5. Setting it up, the first number goes inside the house, and the 2.5 goes on the outside. Okay, look at your divisor. Is it a whole number? No. If it's not a whole number, you have to move that decimal point until it becomes a whole number. So I had to move it one time. I have to do the same thing on the inside, but there is no decimal point. That's because it's invisible. Remember, with whole numbers, the decimal points are invisible, but they're really at the end. So make the decimal point visible and then move it. I only have to move it once, so my new decimal goes here. When you have the whole, what do you put in the holes? You got it, a 0. So to rewrite this nice and neat, our divisor is 25, and our dividend is going to be 520. Our decimal point is now at the end. Bring it straight up to your answer line, and let's divide. Will 25 go into 5? No. So we put a 0. Will 25 go into 52? Sure. Think of your quarters. 2 times, which is 50. Subtract, have a 2 remainder. Bring down this 0, and will 25 go into 20? No. So I have to put a 0 above the 0, and we're not going to have remainders. We're going to keep adding zeros and keep dividing. So I add a 0, bring it down. Will 25 go into 200? Yes. Think of your quarters. 4 25s or 4 quarters make 100 cents or $1. So if I want 200 or $2, I would need 8. And just to check, 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20. Now I have 0 remainder. So Mrs. Delrose paid $20, and remember, we're talking money, so go ahead and add the 0 for your cents. $20.80 per pound. Okay, one more. Ethan and 2 of his friends are making a papier-mâché sculpture using balloons, strips of paper, and paint. The materials cost $11.61. If they share the cost equally, how much should each person pay? Okay, do we know the whole or the total amount? Yes. The materials cost a total of $11.61. The divisor, we're splitting or we're sharing the cost among Ethan and his 2 friends. So the divisor is not 2, it's going to be Ethan plus the 2. So the divisor is 3. and this is going to be the number of groups. The size would be how much each person has to pay. So go ahead and write your expression and do the math, do your division, and come back and check to see how you did. Okay, so your expression is $11.61 divided by 3. And set up your problem. In this case, when you ask yourself, is my divisor a whole number? It is a whole number. So you don't need to be moving any decimal points because we already have a whole number. So just look at your dividend, bring your decimal points straight up to your answer line. And then divide. 3 does not go into 1, but it will go into 11 3 times, which is 9, subtract 2. Bring down the 6. 3 goes into 26 8 times, which is 24. Subtract 2 remainder. Bring down the 1. 3 goes into 21 7 times, which is 21. And we have a 0 remainder. So each person is going to pay $3.87. Oops, and there you go.